As of 1 p.m. on Tuesday, October 29th, more than 50 million early ballots have been cast for the 2024 presidential election. Here to tell us what this number means and what we should expect around voter engagement is Andrea Hailey. She is the CEO of Vote.org, the nation's largest voter engagement digital platform. Andrea, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
These early voting numbers are somewhat amazing to me. I checked this morning, it was 48 million. I checked this afternoon, we're up to 50 million. Let's start broad. What do these figures mean to you, and how remarkable are they compared to prior election cycles?
These figures mean that the American public is really excited to have their voice heard this election cycle. These narratives about apathy and exhaustion just are not true. People are showing up and they want to participate. As you know, we had some of the highest turnout in American history in 2020. So 2020 is a hard baseline to compare ourselves to, but this is a very robust early vote. And what's really exciting is that we're also seeing, many young people all across the country participate.
Speaking of young people, I did want to get into the demographics within these broad totals. So 50 million is the top line. What is standing out to you in terms of what percent of the early vote is young or Gen Z versus millennial versus boomer?
Well, what's standing out to us at Vote.org, we've already registered over 2 million people. And there's always this question of how do you get people from registration all the way to the ballot box? And will you see disturbances in between? There are things that we can't control. For instance, in North Carolina, there were huge storms. But what's interesting is that those storms and the hurricane didn't really stop people from registering, and it's not stopping people from early voting. We're seeing numbers that contextually are pretty equal with what we saw in North Carolina, even without storms happening. So I think we are noticing that there are more women that are coming out to vote. Not surprising this year, considering many women have seen rights rolled back, and I think maybe are participating because of that. We will see. We're seeing higher numbers of women. We are seeing higher numbers of young people. We've seen the largest spike in 18-year-olds registering that we've ever seen. At Vote.org, we've registered over 400,000 18-year-olds. And now the big question with early vote is how many of them are going to come out for early voting versus vote on election day. They tend to vote a little bit more on election day, so we're going to see even higher numbers of participation come out come election day.
I was going to ask, when you talk about early voting versus voting on election day, this enthusiasm that we're seeing, does this indicate to you that we're going to have even more people voting on election day, or is this effectively cannibalizing the election day vote and the final vote totals will end up similar, if not lower, than 2020?
2020 is a very challenging baseline because it was one of the largest turnout years in U.S. history, and I do think that we're going to continue to see people participating all the way through election day. What's different about early voting this year is that you do have a higher mix of Republicans that are also early voting. Traditionally, a lot of Republicans have voted on election day itself. And this year there are some higher numbers voting in early voting. So it's sort of a mixed bag. And the real question is, do we see, a surge, later on election day? I think we're going to see momentum that continues all the way through this year. I think a lot of people, there are also laws that are affecting some of this. We've seen expansions in some states of vote by mail, for instance. And so there are some states where people are going ahead and relying on vote by mail a little bit more than in past election cycles. But we have seen other states that have restricted vote by mail and made it more challenging for absentee requests. And in those states, it'll be interesting to see if you see higher participation on election day.